Hello and welcome to this DW Business Special. From spying accusations against TikTok to contractors building cyber malware for the Russian government, today we are taking a look at the efforts which state and non-state actors undertake to collect data, surveil certain sections of the internet, even launch cyber attacks, and what impact this is having on all of us. I'm Chris Kober in Berlin, and I'm glad to have with me Isabel Skierka. She is a cybersecurity and digital policy expert at the European School of Management and Technology here in Berlin. Isabel, welcome. Good to have you. There seems to be a new cyber threat emerging every other day. Are these threats real, or are we just getting more paranoid?
Thank you for having me, first of all. So these threats are very real, and I think that it is actually a good thing that we are more aware of cyber threats. So I wouldn't discount this as paranoia. And we basically see the cyber threat landscape changing every day. Cyber threats just rising in numbers and also in severity. So I do think, however, that of course we always need to distinguish between the different kinds of threats that we are witnessing. Of course, as you mentioned, the Vulcan files are a great opportunity to get some more insight into some of them.
Let's talk about just that, the Vulcan files. Russian intelligence services have relied on a private IT company for several cyber weapons, a company whose former workers in some cases are now employed by Western firms. That's according to thousands of leaked documents which have been analyzed by a consortium of international journalists. The documents indicate that Moscow-based NTC Vulcan, that's the name of the company, is developing tools to allow Moscow to launch cyber attacks, spread disinformation, and monitor additional sections of the internet. According to recent reports, former workers are employed by Western companies such as Amazon or Siemens. Now, there have been big concerns among security circles that certain hacker groups have direct links to the Russian government. Cozy Bear, for example, is believed to be responsible for numerous cyber attacks. Put these revelations about this Russian company, Vulcan, into perspective for us.
Yes, it's indeed a very interesting revelation, because I think it gives us unprecedented insight into the strategic aims of the Russian state in cyberspace. So, of course, we knew about several hacking attacks from the past that you mentioned, and several groups like Fancy Bear or Cozy Bear, and some others like Sandworm, which is a very prolific Russian hacking group that is responsible for several hacks. So the Vulcan files document several tools that this company, Vulcan, has developed for Russian intelligence agencies and military intelligence agencies that these agencies could deploy. Basically, those tools would enable the intelligence agencies to kind of scan the internet for vulnerabilities in critical infrastructures. They also provided, the company also provided training programs to hackers in the intelligence agencies to hack into critical infrastructures. And then there are other there's another tool basically that would also prepare social media disinformation campaigns, which are a very important part of Russian cyber efforts.
And Isabel, just to understand you right, the crucial thing here is that this is a private company providing all this malware to the Russian government, right?
Yes, that is. So just to be precise, the documents that have been cited by journalists and experts do not themselves contain malicious software. So the software code has not, as far as I know, been revealed, but it documents the programs and the ambitions of the private company and the tools that they want to make available to the Russian intelligence agencies.
Right. And of course, in the meantime, Russia is waging war in Ukraine. There have been cyber attacks on the Ukrainian power grid on a broader scale, if you would. How has the Kremlin's war in Ukraine been impacting Russia's cyber activities?
So Russia has actually conducted operations in Ukraine for a long time. And we know of several very serious operations since 2015, basically, since the war in Crimea started, when Russia annexed territory from Crimea. And so several of the high-level campaigns, for example, have caused blackouts in Ukraine in 2015, 2016. And then the NotPetya attack, which is the most devastating attack economically to date, has also been launched by Russia and has its origins in Ukraine, so against Ukrainian targets. So this is nothing new, really. But of course, the aggression war against Ukraine really exacerbates the situation geopolitically in general. And of course, cybersecurity and cyber warfare, or let's call it cyber operations, are an integral part of it. And so we can expect to see more attacks in the future. And there have already been some very serious attacks in the beginning of the war, such as the attack against the satellite network from VSAT, which is a satellite company.
Isabel, we've been asking another researcher how she's viewing the use of cyber attacks while the Kremlin is waging war in Ukraine. Here's what she said.
Learn from the war in Ukraine is that when we're talking about kinetic war, military war, this is a very fast-paced operation. So the kinetic weapons are used more often. When we talk about peacetime and conflict time, when like political crisis, this is where the cyber operations will be used much more as a supporting and as a pressure weapon. So the cyber operation, they are even more worrisome and will be likelier used in the peacetime than in the wartime. So every organization is a potential target. When you have a, let's say, political crisis or two governments are having something like to discuss, any civilian organization can be used as a potential targets to exercise pressure.
So in a nutshell, cyber attacks, are they more likely and potentially dangerous in time of peace?
I mean, I do think that they are very likely in time of peace as well, but offensive cyber operations are also part of kinetic or kind of accompanying kinetic warfare. So they can definitely strengthen warfare campaigns more generally as well. Of course, so I wouldn't really say that they are more or less serious in peacetime or more or less dangerous. I think that, we saw that during the invasion against Ukraine, the Russian cyber campaign was really strong in the beginning with the VSAT attack. Then the activity in cyberspace, the offensive operations by the Russians kind of declined a little bit, and that might just be because they were not really prepared to stay on the digital battlefield for such a long time, and they had to readjust their strategy. We don't really know, but I wouldn't rule out that there's going to be more accompanying cyber attacks by the Russians against Ukraine.
Let's broaden the view here a little bit. China is backing Russia in its invasion of Ukraine. It's at least not condemning it. How much of a threat do the two together represent in cybersecurity terms?
Well, that's a very important question, because I think we need to put that, as you just mentioned, also in the broader geopolitical context. So what we can see right now is that Russia and China share a common vision of the world and of the future of the world, in which the United States and the West more generally will lose their dominance on the world stage. And in China's view, China will become a very dominant power. And so in that sense, China supporting Russia in the war against Ukraine, including with disinformation campaigns, is definitely something we need to take very seriously, because it is part of the overall strategy of China and its allies, including Russia, to undermine the strength of what they see as their enemies, which is the United States, but also to a certain extent Europe. And so we have also seen efforts to kind of draw a wedge between Europe and the United States. Some experts actually are already speaking about a new Cold War. And several experts also say that there's a new technology Cold War, which we can see in the decoupling of technological infrastructure, but also cyber attacks, such as the ones we've been talking about.
Let's stay on the topic of tech coming out of China, because the Chinese tech firm ByteDance and its highly popular video sharing app TikTok have been in the middle of an increasingly heated debate. Cybersecurity experts and policymakers are accusing the app of collecting way more of its users' personal data than it needs to. About that and the app's potential for national security threats, the TikTok CEO fronted a committee of the US Congress last month. Let's take a listen here.
There are more than 150 million Americans who love our platform, and we know we have a responsibility to protect them, which is why I'm making the following commitments to you and to all our users. Number one, we will keep safety, particularly for teenagers, as a top priority for us. Number two, we will firewall protected US data from unwanted foreign access. Number three, TikTok will remain a place for free expression and will not be manipulated by any government.
If you were a policymaker, Isabel, how concerned would you be about TikTok?
Yes, I think that's a very tricky question at the moment. I think I would definitely be concerned about TikTok for several reasons. But I would also try to see the real threat emanating from the app compared to other apps, for example, as well. So TikTok is a social media app that is used by many, many people in the US, between 80 million, TikTok even claims 150 million people. So it's very popular. At the same time, it collects a lot of data. Some security researchers or technical researchers have actually argued that the amount of data that TikTok collects, or even how it collects it, is not so different from what other social media companies like YouTube, so even Western social media companies do.
Apparently it's more aggressive. It's more aggressive in gaining these data, right?
Yes, it is very aggressive in gaining this data. And then I think what we shouldn't be naive here, because the major issue with TikTok is that it is owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese company. And Chinese companies under national Chinese law are obliged to cooperate with secret services and intelligence agencies in China in order to, for example, provide data about, let's say, users, and even provide access to the tech company's infrastructure itself to these services. So in that sense, we don't know, and even technical experts don't know what is happening to the user data once it has been collected by TikTok. And TikTok has certainly been proven to be more aggressive, as you've said, with providing that data also to third parties.
But if TikTok CEO says no access is there for outside actors to the app, there is no outside manipulation, and TikTok would forbid that, is that credible then?
I don't think that we can rely on that statement. Just as I said, there's no evidence, and if you only look at it from a technical viewpoint, you might be able to say, well, there's no evidence that that anyone else has access to the data. in terms of security agencies, for example. But this is not a technical question anymore. It's a question of governance. And so the question really is, should we trust in TikTok's governance as it is right now? And I think the answer here is that we cannot really do that because we don't know enough about it. And there's this law that I just mentioned, which makes this a geopolitical question in the end as well.
Right. And security concerns and a possible complete ban of TikTok have been a huge bone of contention in U.S.-Sino relations, with Beijing, of course, insisting nothing is wrong here. Let's take a listen.
We have stated our position on this issue many times. Without any evidence to prove that TikTok poses a threat to U.S. national security, the U.S. has repeatedly imposed presumption of guilt and unreasonable suppression on the enterprise concerned. Professional problems should be solved in a professional way. You can't make yourself stronger by suppressing others. The United States should respect the principles of market economy and fair competition, stop unreasonably suppressing foreign companies, and provide an open, fair, just, and non-discriminatory environment for foreign businesses to invest and operate in the U.S.
Isabel, Australia has been the latest country to ban TikTok from official phones, as have done the United States, the European Union, and others. Will it be banned altogether in certain countries over these cybersecurity concerns? What's your take?
I'm afraid I cannot say whether it will be banned or not, but I do think that one option to take very seriously, especially now in the United States, is that TikTok will have to be sold to a US company in a way. And I think that is a real possibility. At least that's what the US has claimed. I also do think that the data security concerns are not the only ones right now. I think another important concern that we need to take into account is the concern of political influence. And there are already a lot of lawmakers in the US on both sides, actually, of the political spectrum that argue that TikTok could be used for election interference. And whether that will be the case or not, if that claim is out there, then that can cause a lot of problems during an election campaign and after the election campaign, because it will be very difficult to verify whether an algorithm had been manipulated or anything else to really interfere into the election. And so in that sense, it's going to provide arguments to different sides on the political spectrum to argue that, and that can cause unrest.
And of course, we've seen election interference via social media platforms in previous election campaigns, and we also have to keep in mind that apparently being tough on China seems to be the most popular domestic motto in U.S. politics at the moment. But it's not only TikTok that's been in the spotlight over security concerns. Just last month, Google suspended the popular Chinese e-commerce app Pinduoduo from its Play Store. The U.S. tech company claiming Pinduoduo contained malware which can be used to spy on users, bypass their cell phone security, and even read private messages. Pinduoduo has more than 750 million monthly users in China. It broke the dominance of Alibaba and JD there, and just recently launched a sister app called Temu in the United States. Here's what Google said. Google Play Protect enforcement has been set to block installation attempts of these identified malicious apps. Users that have malicious versions of the app downloaded to their devices are warned and prompted to uninstall the app. Isabel, back to you. It's more tech coming out of China that's in the crosshairs here. Do you see something like product nationalism arising, that people need to be picking sides, what app they use and where it's coming from?
Well, I think Pinduoduo is a very extreme example. This this takes security and data privacy breaches to a new level, honestly. So we've never seen anything like that before. And this is also an issue for domestic citizens in China, not only for foreign citizens. And so actually, we might pose the question why the Chinese government and the responsible Ministry for Industry and Information Technology has not cracked down on the app yet, because the Chinese have actually introduced a comprehensive data privacy framework in 2021. And this would have been, this app is certainly in breach of that framework, and other technology companies have been clamped down upon. So in that sense, I don't think there's, this is only like a nationalism issue. And I think it is an issue for everyone in a way. I do think that, of course, we will discuss technology from China in a different way in Europe, for example, and how much our critical infrastructures rely on it. There's also the case of Huawei, and I think that's a very important discussion to lead. So in that sense, yes, but it's not only about, and we need to be careful about fragmentation as well, obviously.
Isabel, let's just talk about Pinduoduo here some more for a second. What do all these concerns that you voiced there mean for this sister app, Temu, that's been launched in the United States and possibly elsewhere, is possibly elsewhere available for people?
Well, apparently some people from the team that have programmed these very invasive features of the app are also working for Temu, for the sister app. So that means, that doesn't mean anything great. I don't have the details on this, so I can't say much more, but I think we should be very concerned. And it's definitely important to now really investigate the sister app and look at what it can do. I mean, Pinduoduo was able to actually exploit vulnerabilities in the Android operating system in order to then gain access to even private messages and other operating system features from users. And I think that is extremely concerning, and we should have a look at the sister app, to what extent it does the same, and be very, very cautious about this.
And finally, if we take a look at what we've been discussing, cyber attacks and these cybersecurity issues, plus growing political tensions on many fronts around the world, what's your advice? Ditch our smartphones and bring back our Nokia 6210s without any digital gateways to our data? Well, I really like technology, so I'm not going to tell you to ditch your smartphones, because I think that technology apps, including TikTok even, do bring a lot of benefits to everyone. So no, I wouldn't say that we need to ditch those apps. I do, of course, say, I would, of course, recommend that we need to be very careful individually about about our own cybersecurity at the individual level. But then it's very important that national governments and the European Union, for example, adopt very strict legislation when it comes to data protection and security, and that there's enforcement of that legislation as well for companies also from abroad, that we conduct risk assessments, and these risk assessments need to include not only technical criteria, but also geopolitical criteria. As we just outlined, this is a very important factor. And organizations need to protect themselves at their level as well. And there's a lot of things that they can do, from preventive measures to response measures, and especially implementing safeguards for more cyber resilience, protections against espionage as well. And then, of course, when it comes to warfare, that's an entirely different issue. But so I think we really need to step up the game here.
And of course, the device manufacturers themselves and of the software that we use need to take care of the security of the products that users use as well.
Isabel Skierka, cybersecurity expert at the European School of Management and Technology. Thank you so much for joining us on this DW Business Special. And thanks to you for watching. If you've enjoyed this, there's plenty more from the business team here on the DW News YouTube channel. Make sure to check it out, and see you soon.